You probably hear about fraud all the time, particularly from your bank manager, reaching out to you and telling you what to watch out for. But actually, what fraud have I seen quite commonly being a finance leader in a startup or scale up? And how can you stop this kind of fraud from happening? Hi, my name's Alysha Randall, and I am a fractional CFO, and I also train new and aspiring CFOs who want to work within the startup and scale up space. If that sounds like you, then please hit subscribe. I release weekly videos and talk about things that you need to think about as a new and aspiring finance leader. And as I said at the beginning, today I wanted to talk about the most common fraud that I've seen. I still see this quite regularly. And so these are the steps that I do. And also with my clients, it's one of the first things I get them to do if they haven't already, uh, to make sure that they don't lose literally thousands of pounds. So I have seen this type of fraud, which is when a supplier requests to change their bank details. So it doesn't sound that groundbreaking. So just, supplier just wants to change their bank details. But I have seen it so many times, and they're obviously quite clever about the way that they ask to change supplier details, that there's many different avenues that they do this, fraudsters, obviously, not suppliers, in order to catch you out. And so I have seen this quite a few times in my career. I've seen many instances where we've been able to stop it, but unfortunately I have seen a few instances where processes weren't followed, and unfortunately the business lost thousands of pounds. The worst one I saw was with a US team, and they lost 10,000 US dollars. So it is a real risk, and it's certainly something you need to be mindful of. Certainly educate your financial operations team, or if it's just you yourself, about how the things to look out for, and what you can do. What controls can you put in place to stop this kind of fraud happening? Often when a bank detail request comes through, it's generally by email, and it's generally coming from a supplier, just asking you to change your bank details. Or they may have it on an invoice, that highlights the fact that their bank details have changed and that you need to change them. Now, these kind of requests, I think, are becoming more and more common as people are switching bank accounts a bit more regularly, particularly after the SVB issue that we had last year. Uh, Businesses certainly want to have multiple bank accounts rather than just one. Again, that's a treasury risk that we certainly make sure that we plug. But so therefore, asking for a change of bank details, it's not something that happens once in a blue moon. It does happen a bit more regularly. So the way that a fraudster can put through this request, and therefore potentially you can fall foul to this, is a few ways. The first one is that they can hack the supplier's system and send out emails to all of their customers requesting that they change the bank details to, obviously, the fraudster's bank account. So, it may have exactly the same email, it may even have email address, it may even have the same footer, it may have the person that you know quite well because you've dealt with them before, the accounts receivable function, and therefore you may not be suspicious because it's just an email that's come through. They may even have an attachment that shows the details of the bank account, which may think that it's more legitimate, but in actual fact, it may just be a hacker that's just put this through. And this is one particular area that I have seen where the fraudster has tricked the finance team. And this is where I have seen the money going out because it's from the same person. It's got the company email address, it's got the company footer, and it's got some, an attachment that looks legitimate. So this is where you need to plug this one quite quickly or put in additional controls so that you don't fall foul to this. Another way that I've seen hackers do this is that they send false invoices to your accounts payable function that looks like exactly the same as a existing supplier. And sometimes I've seen it where they send something quite small and immaterial, say a £20 courier, for example, just to test out what what the kind of process is and whether they can get something through. So you may see multiple low value invoices because then they don't have to go through some necessary channels to be approved, or you may see a larger one and they're just taking potluck. And then obviously within this invoice will be a change of bank details request. So this one, I've seen it where it gets stopped quite quickly because, getting invoices approved and going through those channels is relatively common. And for the finance function to pay an invoice that hasn't been approved by the purchaser within the business is highly unusual. I don't see that very often, but just be mindful that sometimes invoices can come through like this that have invoice requests. The third one that I've seen that thankfully we've managed to stop, but I kind of applaud the fraudster. It was very good, and actually I could see how people would fall foul to this one. And this was a when I was working within industry, a finance team. They were in Germany, and the fraudster WhatsApped the accounts payable person. So they were very clever because they managed to work out who manages accounts payable. They also, using WhatsApp, they also used a UK number that wasn't mine, it was obviously theirs. And they also scraped my face from LinkedIn and used that as the profile picture on this fake UK mobile phone number. And they texted the the accounts payable person in Germany. They said that pretending to be me, I said, it's Alysha here. I am currently in a meeting. We are doing a big merger and acquisition conversation or an acquisition conversation. It's highly confidential. I'm currently with the board and the CEO, and we need to do a £10,000 transfer to our lawyers in their escrow account to seal the deal. Please keep this confidential because it's, a confidential transaction. And then they gave, or I gave, I gave the bank details and the lawyer's name. So the lawyer's name was the same to the lawyer that we use, but the bank account was different, and potentially because it was an escrow account rather than their trading account. Now, thankfully, the accounts payable person reached out to their finance director in Germany to just let them know that this is what's come through. And thankfully, again, the finance director reached out to me to check, how quick they actually both believed it. So potentially, the controls we kind of talked about a fair bit afterwards. But the finance director then reached out to me and just to find out how quickly they wanted this payment to be made and what have you. And then I was alerted to the fact that this was actually fraudulent. So very clever. The fraudster nearly got the cash, I think, if they didn't reach out to me. But it just kind of shows that they can be really tricky, and they can really find out a lot of information about you and your business and also your corporate structure so that it does look legitimate. Anyway, so back to change of bank details. There are a few things that I put in place with new clients immediately to stop or help stop a lot of these fraud requests in its tracks. The first one we really focus on is the change of bank detail requests. So anytime a change of bank detail request comes through, we would always reach out to the supplier directly. We absolutely would not use the phone number or the email that the bank detail request has come through on. We would go to our system and have a look at ideally the phone number of the finance function of the supplier, and we would call them or email them directly and ask them if they did in fact send a bank request. We also, within that email, we would also get them to fill out a form that has the change of bank detail request on it. And within that form, there would be questions that a fraudster may not know. So, for example, what was the last payment that we made to this particular supplier? What was the original bank details? And then also a sign off. So we always get them to fill out that form, and generally, or actually never, has a fraudster filled out that form correctly. And we've never, by using this tactic, by both confirming directly using the details that are in our system and also getting them to fill out a one-page form. And if you are working within finance, this one-page form, you would be able to fill it out, within a few minutes. It's quite quick. So that kind of gives you extra comfort that it is actually coming from them. And then similarly, when we then change the bank details and before we actually make a payment, about a week before the payment, we would notify them again using the email and maybe even snail mail to confirm that the change of bank detail request has been put through, and going forward, we will be transferring to this new bank account. So putting this process in immediately does kind of stop those change of bank detail requests going through, and we've never had really any problems with that. Going through the supplier onboarding, so with new supplier onboarding, it's also worthwhile being a little bit vigilant as well. Obviously, with really large companies, with all of these tech businesses that really well, sometimes doing a little bit of check is worthwhile. But especially with smaller businesses or businesses that you've never heard of before, it's worthwhile just doing a little bit of sleuthing, internet sleuthing, to just check this business out. Have a quick look on Companies House, maybe have a look for their website. Maybe even call the number that's on their website to just check the details that have come through, especially when there's been the first time invoice. So it is worthwhile doing these kind of checks. Sometimes it's just a 5-minute, sleuthing on the internet, as I said, and it all looks pretty legitimate, and you're comfortable with the purchaser within your team that they have also checked the supplier out and they're happy that the supplier is legitimate. Anything that looks unusual or you're a bit concerned about, just pick up the phone and call them, and just to check that everything's legitimate. It's worthwhile doing that 5-minute check. And then finally, obviously, any payment request that comes through, in the Germany situation, again, it was a change of bank details, but it was also a request to pay a large amount of money without any documentation and without any face-to-face authority. So therefore, those kind of instances, just make sure that your finance function would not act on something like that. And then lastly, obviously, all invoices need to be approved by the purchaser within the business. So even if it's really small, unless it's a recurring thing, like Amazon, for example, you may find that you get 10 Amazon invoices a month, and they're all going to the same bank account, and they're all for small amounts. There may be an element where the office manager has authority to approve all of these things. So within reason, but you don't want an invoice just coming into the finance function, nobody knowing about it, and then just paying it. So I think most finance functions are aware of this. I don't think that is a massive problem, but certainly the change of bank details, fraud, as I said, I've seen people fall foul to that. It is still very, very common. No doubt you've probably got notifications from your banks about this, but it's worthwhile just putting in a few controls just to be vigilant. I appreciate that with startups and scale-ups, putting in additional controls and bureaucracy, a lot of the team might be a bit allergic to that, but losing £10,000, for example, or $10,000 can really hurt a startup where you're not flush with cash. So it's worthwhile educating the business to let them know that these things do happen. You know, doing this extra minute or two of control testing will save you from losing tens of thousands of pounds and dollars. So just let them know that this is not uncommon, and it's worthwhile doing these checks. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some food for thought. And again, if you don't have that bank details request controls in place, do it immediately, right now, if not tomorrow, and then hopefully you'll save your business losing and de-risk that kind of fraud happening to you and your business. So yeah. Anyway, that's everything from me today. Please don't forget to hit subscribe, particularly if you're a new or aspiring finance leader in a startup or scale up. And I'll see you next week. Thanks.